All right, now before I get into the meat of the video, there's something I have to admit. Growing up, I would always see this show, and I honestly, truly believed in my heart as a kid that this was like a cheap, like Simpsons ripoff. So now that I have Disney Plus and I got a chance to actually watch the show for myself, I actually got to realize that this show was actually really good. And emphasis on was because getting into the later seasons, especially the more recent ones that are on Hulu, you can tell that honestly, it seems like the writers kind of ran out of ideas. But let me explain why that is and why Futurama doesn't work anymore. Now, first, to understand why it doesn't work anymore, we first need to look at what made it work to begin with.
I period C period wiener.
Now, for anyone who hasn't seen Futurama, let me give you a quick little catch-up story. Essentially, Fry is a pizza delivery boy from the year 1999. He gets frozen accidentally and wakes up 1,000 years in the future. That's essentially the premise of the show. Of course, he meets Leela, who I will definitely touch on later in this video because her and Fry's relationship is a key part of something that really bothered me about this show, but I'll get into that later. And of course, he meets Bender, the professor, Zoidberg, Amy, and the rest of the cast that we meet along the first season. Now, to me, what made Futurama so special was not only its humor, but it's also how it balanced the humor as well as the heart, and then also just the random chaos all mixed in, but it mixed together perfectly. This show is essentially what people used to claim Rick and Morty was. And I know that sounds so corny and so like just cringy, but literally hear me out, bro. Hear me out. They literally created an entire mathematical theorem for a single episode of this show. I'm not even making this up, Eli. This is real. This is genuinely part of an episode. And what makes it so great is the fact that you don't need to understand a single thing you just saw on the screen to understand the episode. You can watch the episode and still enjoy it, still get a laugh out of it without even understanding whatever the hell that is that you just saw. And then there's the feels. And when I tell you, like, you would not expect a show like this, at least when you watch the first initial few episodes, you would not expect it to get as good as it does when it comes to making you feel like different emotions, but it really does. Like, it really, really does. Like, this show will have you watching Bender scam like random people and then go from that to some like Jurassic Park. Like, I'm not gonna lie, bro, I'm still not over that dog waiting for Fry. Like, it was genuinely so upsetting. And it's honestly the perfect example of how this show can be what it is and still have emotional moments, which is something that I feel like later on in the series they attempt to do, but it just does not work the same way. Now, this is not gonna be like an in-depth character analysis on each and every character because that's not what this video is about, but I really did need to talk about Fry and Leela, and honestly how frustrating that will they won't they relationship started to become over time and how it just got dragged out. And I mean dragged out. Like, this storyline between them went on for years, like literal decades, bro. Like, like it's actually insane. And I mean that like genuinely because of how many revivals and gaps in production. Like, this has been going on for years. So honestly, by the time you get to the Comedy Central seasons, it honestly just felt like the writers were stalling because they didn't know how to handle Fry and Leela as an actual couple. They just didn't want to write it. The reason why I bring this up is because Fry and Leela's relationship is a perfect example of what made Futurama so special, but also what held the series back in general. Early on, their will they won't they dynamic was fresh and it was heartfelt, and you could see the potential building in a potential relationship between them. But of course, all that potential kind of got wasted, and whenever we would get some type of clearance on that,
even that nasty robot, what's his name? Of course. We won't remember anything that's happened.
No. Wait.
Say.
Wait.
They usually reset it by the end of the episode or just completely forget about it. Or in the next episode have Fry cheat on Leela or Leela cheat on Fry, and it just becomes pointless at a certain point. And it sucks because their story could have been a very beautiful and, good thing for the story. Of course, keeping it episodic, but it could have switched up the story a little bit. But instead, it kind of just became emblematic of how Futurama struggled to grow alongside its characters. The constant need to rely on old tropes and reset the status quo, it kind of just very annoying, and it dulled what made the emotional moments and scenes in this show so memorable in the first place. Looking back at those early seasons of Futurama, it was almost like lightning in a bottle. The jokes landed a lot better, the characters were less forgettable, and honestly, the futuristic setting made it feel like the writers could honestly do whatever they wanted and it would still make sense because it's the future. And even though it got cut short, those seasons left a legacy that would eventually bring the show back, unfortunately.
We're back, baby.
When the show first premiered back in 1999, by the way, the depiction of the year 3000 felt like, the future. Self-driving cars, robot companions, freezing yourself into different years. Like, that was all wild things that people never really, well, people thought of, but of course, you would never think that's reality. It all had this unique charm of, being absolutely absurdly futuristic while still poking fun at the modern day life, at least back then. But now in 2024, that distant future in Futurama doesn't feel so distant anymore. Like back then, the idea of AI and, robots, working and flipping burgers, like that's something that was so unrealistic at the time. So it made so much sense watching this and be like, oh yeah, that could be something in the future. But now we damn near have that shit, except for flying cars, but Elon Musk probably working on that. Futurama's whole gimmick was that it could dream up these insane, imaginative future scenarios that felt completely out of reach, like something that we would never see for years and years to come. But now that technology is kind of caught up, that wild imagination kind of starts to feel less wild. And honestly, what felt like clever satire now feels like honestly outdated and kind of predictable. And that's where the Hulu revival comes in. After almost a decade off of, air completely, Futurama returned 2023 to a world that's pretty much completely different than when it first aired. And the biggest problem that it has is that the show didn't really change. It's like the writers are still stuck in 2010, but they brought the same jokes and setups and tropes all the way back here to 2023. And the problem is the future that they're living in doesn't feel futuristic. It doesn't feel distant anymore. It feels like we're living in the same future that they are. Of course, a little different, but to an extent, yes, it feels like the same. Like, instead of them trying to be innovative and create a further distant future, instead the show tries to make episodes about TikTok and NFTs and cancel culture. And it's like, yes, those topics are current, but they do not fit the Futurama vibe. It feels like something that any other TV show could make nowadays. And I feel like the show's biggest strength was always its ability to blend timeless humor with the crazy sci-fi stuff, not just slap a little Futurama sticker on it and, now let's talk about TikTok and NFTs. Like, nobody asked for that. I promise you, nobody wanted Bender selling NFTs. Nobody asked for that. So the real issue with Futurama today is that it just can't shock anybody anymore. I feel like a lot of the funny stuff and a lot of the, best things about Futurama early on is that it had that shock value. And even rewatching it now in 2024, or as I'm recording this, 2025, the way that they thought the internet would be in the future was still shocking. It was still funny. It was still interesting. The future that they once imagined in Futurama kind of looks a lot like the present. And instead of evolving that, the show is kind of just stuck in the past. Like, they recycle the same old jokes and ideas, except they just don't hit the same way. And that's what I meant earlier when I was talking about how they try to do emotional things, but it just doesn't work. In the earlier seasons, Futurama made us laugh because it was ahead of its time. And now in 2024, 2025, as I'm recording this, it actually just turned 2025 as I'm making this video. So I hope I don't say 2024 too much. I think I said 2023 earlier. You know what? Don't cook me, y'all. Don't cook me. And what might be the biggest issue with Futurama coming back in today's time is the fact that the future itself just doesn't hold the same magic it used to. Now, I'm no unk, okay? I'm not like 25 years old talking about this, but I mean, like, if you just think about how people thought about the internet back in the day versus what we know now, someone saying, oh, what if you can put a helmet on and you can look at sharks underwater back in the day, that sounded crazy, and that sounded like something that would never be possible, but that's something you can do now. You can put a VR helmet on and look at sharks in the ocean if you wanted to. The beauty of Futurama was that it could take the idea of the future and make it feel exciting and scary while also being hilarious all at once. But now that the future is here and it feels smaller and more corporate and less mysterious, the show that once thrived on big ideas now feels like it's kind of struggling to keep up. Futurama doesn't work anymore because it was always about dreaming big. It gave us a world in which anything was possible and all the absurd and crazy ideas for the future could come to life. But now that we're here in that future, there isn't that much to imagine anymore. There isn't that much to say, oh, wouldn't this be crazy, because it's happening. Like, that's the worst part about it. And I feel like that is why Futurama doesn't work anymore, and there just can't be this show anymore. This show can't be what it is, because unless they force it to try to be something it's not, which they are trying to, it's just never going to work, and it's never going to hit the same as it used to. But I'm going to end it off at that. Let me know in the comment section down below whether or not you agree with me, if you disagree, and let me know if there's anything I can improve on in this video. I always ask at the end of every video because I love hearing you guys' feedback. You know, I want to know how I can improve for you guys, how I can make my content better for you guys, because, you know, I'm doing this out of the love for, of course, me making videos, but also for you guys' entertainment. So let me know what you guys liked from this video. If you guys didn't like anything, I know last video y'all cooked me in the comment section for my mic, and I'm sorry that it sounded so bad, bro. Someone said a prison collect call, and I started literally dying. But if you really did enjoy this video up until this point, please hit a like, and I will see you guys in the next one. Dante signing off.